Good morning, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us today in this webinar about European approach to micro-credentials for lifelong learning. It's really great to see many familiar names registering, and we think that today we will have a full house. A lot of people has some interest to join us. The webinar is organized by the European Association of Regional and Local Authorities for Lifelong Learning, and also by SwissCore, which is the Swiss Contact Office for European Research, Innovation and Education. So just a few housekeeping rules. My name is Noelia, and I work for the European Association of Regional and Local Authorities for Lifelong Learning. As I mentioned, we are going to be quite a few today, so we hope that you can all remain muted during the entire duration of the webinar. As for your cameras, you can do as you want. You can leave them on or off. As you know, because it was stated in the registration form, the webinar is going to be recorded, and we might also take photos for dissemination purposes. And like this, you can afterwards, once the webinar is over, and we will send the PowerPoint presentation and the recording to all of you, you can also share it with your colleagues that could maybe not be able to participate today. So my first words go to my colleague Levenez, and also to Florence and Lauren from SwissCore for organizing it together. And Florence will be taking up the chat, so please don't hesitate. If you have any question, write it on the chat. We would love to give you the floor, but as I mentioned, we are probably going to be too many. But please be reassured that we will try to answer all of your questions. If there is no time for them, then we will try to get back to you by email after the webinar with those responses. Thank a lot first of all to you, to the audience, to the participants for being here with us today. A big thank you as well to the speakers for their availability and spending time in preparing this interesting presentation. And yes, let's just start and enjoy the webinar. So first of all, we have Maria Pascual, and the floor is yours, Maria. Maria is working as International and Institutional Relations Officer at the Directorate General for Vocational Education and Training at the Regional Government of Catalonia. She has a lot of experience in internationalization strategies and EU-funded projects, and we are pleased to have her as well as leader of EARLALL Working Group for Skills and Labor Market. So Maria, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Noelia. It's a pleasure for me to be here to introduce this webinar with so much because it's a new initiative from the European Union that I think that will benefit all of us. So from the Skills and Labor Market, Labor Working Group in EARLALL, we are really happy to host this webinar. So good morning and welcome everybody to go together, as you said, with the SwissCore, the Swiss Information for European Policies and Programs in Research, Innovation and Education, located in Brussels. We are going to introduce to you what micro-credentials are, those short, more flexible learner-centered forms of learning opportunities that are being developed. As we'll see later during the webinar, micro-credentials can be particularly useful for people who want to upskill and reskill professionally, as well as for vocational students wishing to spend some time abroad studying in a foreign training center. That won't happen if we all of us don't work together for that aim. That is, for example, competent authorities such as regional governments should recognize officially those micro-credentials acquired abroad, and also host and sending institutions should work together to try to find what pieces of knowledge those workers or students can get abroad. We've worked hard on the agenda. We hope we are going to give you the right insights for you to carry out these projects I was mentioning and talking about. And please, as my colleague Noelia said, ask all the questions you need to get answers for. And if we don't have time, we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks to the audience, thanks to the speakers, thanks to EARLALL, as usual, for being so innovative and working so hard for vocational education and training, and upskilling and reskilling of people in the labor market. So no more words from me. I do hope you enjoy the webinar and we all learn a lot. So Laurent, Noelia, I think that it's up to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And we will hear a bit more from Maria at the end of the webinar during the concluding remarks. So without further ado, we are now passing on the floor to William O'Keefe, who is a policy officer in the Vocational Education and Training Unit in the Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at the European Commission. He's been quite involved in the proposal on an EU approach to micro-credential and has previously worked on the new Europass, as well as digital entrepreneurial skills in the Commission. Previously to joining the Commission, William worked for the quality and qualification in Ireland, where he's coming from. So William, please, the floor is yours. And for the audience, if you have any questions to William, please write them in the chat and we will pass them through. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelia, and thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to this event. It's always a pleasure to work with EARLALL and SwissCore. So really the timing of today's event, it's perfect really, because we're coming to the closing stages of the negotiation on this proposal for a council recommendation on a European approach to microcredentials. We hope will be concluded and adopted even by the end of June. So the negotiations with the member states after the Commission adopted the proposal are advancing very well. And there's been really ongoing dynamic discussions with the member states about what this approach should look like, what its ambition is, and how we really can enable this idea of a European approach that's a response to the ongoing and emerging growth in microcredentials. So today, really, I'm going to take you through this, the elements, the outline of this proposal, so you can understand what it aims to achieve. But of course, I know that later today, you're going to be having very interesting presentations from a cross-section of the different types of projects that are working on microcredentials more broadly, and of course with relation to VET. And this is the prompt for our work, really. Why has the Commission done this? Why did we design this proposal? Quite simply, we saw that there is this huge exponential growth in demand and use of microcredentials across the board, and it was especially the case during the pandemic, where so many aspects of our lives shifted online. So some of the platforms that are offering microcredentials, reported 400% growth in the uptake in microcredentials. So this is quite startling for a term that first only appeared in 2013 as a Google search term. Maria, in her introduction, set the scene very well, describing microcredentials as the outcomes, that is the record or the award or the certificate issued after a short learning experience. And we find that these short targeted learning experiences can have real potential to help people with their lifelong learning, with their employability, and to help them to manage their careers and to upskill and reskill, so that they can ensure that they have the skills they need for a fast-changing labour market, for fast-changing education systems, and just making sure that they remain employable and having the skills that they need throughout life. So it's with this context that the Commission developed a proposal. So the proposal was adopted in December of last year, and certainly there's been editing and updating of the proposal under the French presidency as part of the discussions with member states. But the overall outline of the proposal remains the same. The proposal sets objectives and scope, because we're dealing with really a new topic. It's quickly growing, but there are many, many open questions about microcredentials and their role in education, training and learning going forward. And so for this reason, it's not often that you put into this type of legislative text the idea of objectives and scope of what we're trying to achieve. The proposal also sets out a common definition for describing microcredentials, because simply, we need a starting point, what it means. Then we also include an annex of 10 standard elements that should be included for describing microcredentials. Because if we want to develop the trust and understanding and be assured about the quality of these microcredentials, we need to be able to access information on the microcredentials in a clear and consistent way. And that's what these standard elements mean to achieve. And finally, the proposal also includes some principles for the designing and issuing of microcredentials. Again, because we're starting with such an open field and a new and emerging landscape for microcredentials, these principles are simple guidance and indicators of the approach you can take when designing and issuing microcredentials. All these three elements are written in a very open and universal way, because there's a huge range and diversity of people, of providers offering microcredentials right now. We want this proposal to be relatable and usable to all those providers, especially as this area of work is expected to continue to grow. And then when, as well as these building blocks for the EU approach to microcredentials, there's sets of recommendations for the member states and the Commission that they're recommended to develop ecosystems for microcredentials, which means looking at their existing systems, existing tools, qualifications frameworks, governance, quality systems, systems for measuring workload, and looking at how these are fit and relevant for the purposes of microcredentials, and if they need to be adapted or updated. Because of course, all those tools for describing learning do already exist at national and EU level. And then collectively, we can look at them together and see how they may be used for the purposes of microcredentials. Secondly, we also look at the development of the potential of microcredentials. And the proposal includes a set of recommendations to the member states to look at microcredentials when it comes to different purposes in education and training and skills policies and in active labour market policies. And I'll take you through this idea of potential in a moment. Also, a proposal typically includes recommendations to the Commission. I'll take you through those briefly in a moment as well. But of course, the Commission has a key role in working with the member states, enabling cooperation to ensure the successful implementation of the eventual Council recommendation. So briefly on the objectives, they touch on the points I've already made. The objectives of this proposal is to ensure that people have the knowledge, skills and competences that they need for a fast-changing labour market and society. We want to support the readiness, the preparedness of providers of microcredentials so that they can actively ensure the transparency and flexibility of the microcredentials they're offering to really support and empower people. And ultimately, we want this work on microcredentials to foster inclusiveness and equal opportunities and really ensure resilience and social fairness. Now, this isn't to suggest that microcredentials are a catch-all solution for the needs of learners and the needs around skills, but this simply establishes that microcredentials can have a role establishing a role in complementing and supporting initial education and training and degrees, qualifications and VET qualifications to develop this culture of lifelong learning, really complementing and enabling all the work that is ongoing already. There's some important points to reflect on in the scope of this proposal. Microcredentials are not new. There's already work ongoing, as I've mentioned. So this proposal is about reflecting on what would be useful going forward for us to really be able to understand these microcredentials in a coherent way. It's been an important political point for many member states that we established that microcredentials do not seek to replace or disrupt existing systems for qualifications or initial education. It's about complementing those types of education, in particular for the adult workforce, so that they can access targeted relevant learning throughout their lives that fits the way that they may work. And like I mentioned, this definition is about setting out this proposal is about setting out a definition and and guidance around designing and issuing and describing micro-credentials so that ultimately we can be confident in their quality, transparency and uptake. So this is the text you'll see in the proposal about the scope, and it's just again about really being very clear on the parameters of this work and what it intends to do. So I talked about this idea of the potential of micro-credentials, and it's very, these recommendations to the member states seek to give suggestions, recommendations, and in some ways even be kind of eye-opening and indicating the real broad potential of micro-credentials. So the potential is set out under two headings: education, training and skills policies and active labour market policies. I won't take you through everything here on the slide, but you can look to the presentation slides afterwards or ask me any questions. You'll see under education and training policy, we touch on points about enabling access and transitions between different types of education, in particular for disadvantaged groups, targeted work on digital and green skills, as well as teacher training. And then also challenging specific stereotypes and other types of discrimination. Micro-credentials could be designed and used to address these specific issues. Then similarly under active labour market policies, micro-credentials can be used in reactive, responsive ways to tackle particular skills challenges, to as part of specific activities to support the upskill and reskill of workers, or support certain target groups like self-employed or other vulnerable groups or young people, and also maybe to enable regulatory requirements like using micro-credentials as a way to upskill and reskill for people who need to renew licenses or perform mandatory training or qualify for certain types of permits. You could issue micro-credentials after every new period of training or professional development that they do. So you'll see that there's a wide range of potential activities under here. But of course, the nature of this text is that it's a council recommendation, and it's always for member states to implement these types of proposals in line with national circumstances and national priorities. So my last point for now, just in giving you this outline of the proposal and what it aims to achieve, is that, you know, there are specific recommendations to the Commission, including looking at existing EU tools like the European qualifications frameworks, credit systems, even Bologna tools, to see if and how these could be adapted to support the overall implementation of the recommendation. There's a specific role for Europass described in the proposal, including supporting the issuing of digital credentials for micro-credentials in a secure and authentic way. The Commission can also support cooperation between the member states and stakeholders on these discussions around micro-credentials. And the last aspect is this idea of research and data collection. Like I mentioned, micro-credentials emerged as a concept in the early 2000s. And in fact, we don't have consistent and clear information on the use and impact of micro-credentials because it is so new. But going forward, we'll certainly need to be collecting information on micro-credentials to understand their growth and their use and how they're enabling lifelong learning and employability. So again, the Commission can support the implementation of this recommendation by looking at any necessary research and data collection. So with that, I've taken you through the elements of the proposal, and really we hope to be able to share the concluded adopted proposal with you already next month. But this gives you an indication of the aspects that are in there. And even though, of course, the Council proposal addresses member states because it's a political text, we hope that the elements in there, the definition, the standard elements, and the principles will be taken on board by practitioners, by program designers, by educators and employers, and actively take a role in this future of micro-credentials. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, William. Also for all the work that you've been doing at the European Commission level to push for this initiative. And we remain at your disposal should you wish to disseminate it further or raise awareness about the possibility of micro-credential. I don't see any question in the chat. I don't know if any of the speakers might probably have something really quick for William?
I can stay online for a little bit anyway, just in case anything pops up.
Yeah, that's great, because I guess some other question will pop up later during the roundtable and the different presentation. Thank you, William, for staying here with us a bit longer.
No problem.
So we are going from the European Commission work from the European Institution support to microcredential to provide you now with an example that is more practical, and it shows how microcredential can be used at a pan-European level. And this is in the context of the Automotive Skills Alliance. And to present that example of how to do it at a European level in a practical way, we have Dr. Svatopluc Stolfa, sorry for my wrong pronunciation, who is working at the VSV Technical University of Ostrava. He's a member and partner in the Automotive Skills Alliance, and we are very happy to have you here and to count with your intervention and presentation. So the floor is yours now.
Hello. Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, please? Yeah, sorry. I am now speaking through Marek Spanik microphone because we are sitting together in the car. I'm sorry for making headache maybe to the organizers. We joined late, but okay. Let's have a look at our thing. Please, could you please allow Marek Spanik to share the slides? And he will share. So I will be presenting our approach, what we done in so-called Automotive Skills Alliance as a pact for skills, and where it all comes from and why we need to have automotive skills agenda and approach. Marek, please, next slide. Please make it bigger. Present mode.
You are muted.
Some technical issues. As you see, we are sitting in the car. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to the end of our destination. So I'm sorry for some difficulties. Next one, please. Okay, so automotive skills agenda. Why? So the European automotive industry is quite big, and these times going the unprecedented 2 times transformation, green and digital, defined in the agendas of Green Deal and Fit for 55, and the mobility ecosystem is facing additional pressures as other ecosystems as well, caused by COVID-19 and increased price of raw materials, energy, semiconductors, and so on. So there is a really big transition and problems in the sector. The transition will have an impact on already approximately 15 million people employed in the automotive value chain through the whole Europe. So it's a big bench of people, and there are jobs in risk, yeah, because when we are, for example, will be changing to the electric and engine instead of propulsion engines and so on. So there are completely different technologies, and people that were working so far on these technologies from the research to the product.
And you're muted again.
Yes, we cannot hear you.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that was some mistake. Okay. So I don't know what you heard, but the transition is very, let's say, difficult for 15 million people, and has to be done for 15 million people. And we have to create some massive, sustainable, pragmatic approach towards education and training, upskilling, reskilling, and new skills that are needed for the new industry. background. So European Skills Agenda, Pact for Skills, where it comes from? It comes from the latest European Skills Agenda from the last years. Yeah, that's firmly anchored with the principles of European pillar of social rights, and it also supports the EU industrial strategy and the goals of Green Deal and that digital transformations. There are defined industrial ecosystems, and as you can see, we have a mobility, transport, automotive ecosystems, defined as a Pact for Skills alliance. Automotive Skills Alliance builds our mission is to bring together different stakeholders involved in the automotive ecosystems, not just the businesses, of course, but we have to connect businesses, education training providers, research, public authorities, and social partners together with the regional coordinators, because regional coordinators knows their area well and can connect the correct people to correct educational providers, training providers, research, and vice versa. Because, for example, so why this whole value chain, or I would say skill chain in this context, we have to start from the research. When we want to develop something green, something more sustainable, and so on, it always starts with the research. But it's not done in the research, then we lost the other levels as well, from the production to the maintenance and so on. So we have to first develop something in the research and then do it in the business, train the people and so on. Yeah. The mission of ASA, I forgot to say that ASA, as a Automotive Skills Alliance, was established by the coordination of 4 automotive alliances. One alliance is ACEA, Association of OEM. The second one is CLEPA, Association of Tier 1 Suppliers. Then ETRMA, Tire and Rubber Industries, and maintenance companies and so on. So we have covered all the value chain for the automotive sector. We have to enable the support and massive upskilling, reskilling across the automotive ecosystem in collaboration in the skills partnership, update the intelligence about the trends, needed job roles, skills, and so on. And we are building on, and we are slowly getting, sorry for the long introduction, to our framework of micro-credentials and framework for skills and how we do it in our platform. And we have also the platform for sharing the best practices. Yeah. Next one. So just to end this first introduction part, the Automotive Skills Agenda is built, was under development for a long time from high-level group Gear 2030 in the years 2015 to 2017, when we've got the final report of automotive competitiveness and sustainability. Then we were continuing by drives, where with VSB, where I am from, I, together with my brother that is now president of Automotive Skills Alliance, we were coordinating the drives project in automotive sector. There is also undergoing another blueprint for sectoral cooperation in the battery sectors. That blueprints projects were defined by the New Skills Agenda for Europe in 2016. And 2020, the European Skills Agenda defined some actions called Pact for Skills that were launched in November 2020, and where we formed based on this all background Automotive Skills Alliance. Now I will hand over to my colleague Marek, and he will explain you the EU-wide database quickly, and then how we did the micro-credentials. Yep. Just to introduce the Marek is sitting now with me in the car, as you can see. Maybe he will switch on his own camera. So we are waiting. We are working, or he's working on this framework and implementation and development of micro-credentials.
Yeah.
So
Hello everyone. I will provide you the insights how we did it and how we implemented the DRIVES framework, which is the platform where we have the training offer, the skills, concepts and job roles, and how we offer the micro credentials for the skills that the trainees will learn. Yeah. But first, to give you the context, throughout the DRIVES project, there were 3 pillars. One of them was the recognition pillar, and under that we have built the recognition framework, which is used to issue the micro credentials. Maybe the umbrella view here is that we have the employees there, the experts community who updates and works with the skills and job role concepts, and it is encapsulated with the, let's say, certification bodies. We can map their, let's say, the ECTS, EQUAT credit schemes, and some recognition quality rules that we have defined. Maybe just to provide you the structure, because this is needed for the micro credentials, we have different domains, like, for example, hydrogen, repair maintenance, quality. Under that, we have different job roles, which are composed from competencies, skills, and knowledge. We have it connected within the framework, which is implemented through the web application. There are links in the presentation, so you can access it. This is composed from the skills, and on the left side, it is the job roles, and on the right side on the picture, we have the training education, which is composed, let's say, from learning outcomes. And this all together is, let's say, matched together through the different levels of maturity, which represents, let's say, the expert level of knowledge of the skills, practitioner, and awareness. That goes for the job roles, because you can specify what the job role and the worker who will be working as that job role needs to know on which level. The same goes for the training, and you can then train the job roles. Yeah. So this is mapped through the learning outcomes, and for these learning outcomes, for different skills on different levels, we issue the ASA digital badges. It was called before the DRIVES project ended, the DRIVES digital badge, but now we are transitioning into the ASA, where this is sustained. So overall, the digital badge as a micro credential is a recognized achievement of the competence skills. For example, you have a knowledge of artificial intelligence on level expert in our case. This is not to disrupt anything that is really now in use. So we can, in our platform, map existing parallel certificates. For example, when you do course at some university, you can get some certification, you can map it in the system. This is also then used further to define the different types of badges. And the trainees will receive the badges after it is specified in the system, and the training provider knows the information about who completed the training, so he can in the system then issue the badges. Yeah. And the training could have, let's say, mapped 10 skills, so the people will get 10 badges on different levels. We have also defined the recognition criteria, where we have like the gray badges and golden badges. I will show you on other slides. But when you want to get the golden badges, and for us that's like a higher recognition and a higher quality, we recognize that if there is any kind of mapping to ECTS credits or EQUAT credits, or if the certification, if there is information that there is a certification provided with the training completion, if that's coherent with the ISO 17024. And we use for the open badges the structure and the specification of open badges. So that's the information structure, but of course, since it's scalable and very versatile, it can be mapped to any kind of other credentials. So for example, the Europass. Yeah. Then here is a link, for example, I have it on the screenshots there, but also maybe one note here, it can be also issued through the platform, but also through the API, which enables to connect to the other systems to our platform. So that's easier for the provider to issue the badges. And here are the example how it looks. So these are the types of the badges. As I said, the gray ones are like the lower recognition for us. We categorize as a knowledge. These are the books and the skills, so the type of the badge, and then the different number of stars that represents the maturity level, and the golden ones means that it fulfills the recognition criteria. And maybe to show you how it looks in the platform, we of course have it's a repository of training courses from different providers, and those providers will say that you have completed the training. Then you have like a learning account where you can track the progress, and it is shown here that I have completed these 2 trainings, let's say 24th of February in 2021. So I will see it here. I can also see if that fulfills the recognition criteria in that column. And then based on that, I will have different number of badges. So I will always see which one is the best and on which day I have received it. I can have multiple badges, for example, for the skill of identification of process improvement. And then I can see more details, and this is how it looks. Yeah? And this page is shareable, it's public, and you can put it anywhere when you want to prove that you know it. It contains the information about the person who received it. Then there is a description about the badge, earning criteria, and for which training and which skills it represents in the system, in the database, yeah, and on which level. And then of course we have some additional views, like you can share the whole let's say portfolio of your badges and so on. Yeah, so you can access also my portfolio, which is here, and it's somehow public, and then you can play with that. And the summary, basically how we implement it, it's a free way and very inclusive to recognition of skills and competencies. We have different levels of the badges, so we have some kind of recognition criteria which we have defined, and of course the system is scalable also for the future when there are the recommendations finalized, so we can adapt very quickly for the trends there. Yeah, so that's our example, and we would be happy for any kind of questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marek and Svatopluk, for this very interesting presentation provided in a car. I think it's probably the best that I've seen taking place in a car. I mean, I hope that you are having a safe trip wherever you are going. In any case, I think it was a very interesting example, and that can inspire other stakeholders who are possibly thinking about implementing microcredential within their European partners. I haven't seen any question in the chat. Is that right? Yes. Any quick question to the speakers? Otherwise, I hope that you can stay a bit longer. Oh yeah, there is one question from Francisca. I don't see your entire name on the screen, sorry. But
no problem, heading
you can quickly take the floor. We don't have much time, but please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the interesting presentation. My question would be, maybe I missed it, since when have you implemented the platform, and is it used like in whole of Europe, or in which country is it used?
Yeah, this was originally implemented in the DRIVE project, and since it's under the ASA, it's broadly used by all the partners. We have 90 members there, as Svatopluk was mentioning, the automotive associations, OEMs. We also have different working groups who that work on the skills intelligence. So the idea is that the platform, and since this was not about the platform as such, but only the micro-credentials, but any kind of provider is open to contact us or freely go to the platform, and you can create your profile, and basically your training offer could be there in the system. And since you don't put training material there, but you just specify the information and mapping of the skills, then it is nicely visible that you can compare the training with the others in the system. So you can, so for example, benchmark how the others have it. And since you will be using the ESCO skills and the skills that were defined as an additional layer in our system, then if you specify the skills that are often used by other providers, so that could be some hot topics like, let's say, functional safety, that you could see that those job roles that were defined, for example, in DRIVE, or by different groups who, for example, define the functional safety job roles. That means that you would see how your training covers these job roles that are, for example, defined by other people. So that's very broad, and anyone can use the platform, and anyone can issue the badges.
Yeah, just for saying so the platform is 1.5 years old, and we still have to build that snowball effect by the usage in the Automotive Skills Alliance that was formed recently. Yeah, and we still need to create that snowball effect in that area. But I think we have a good start because we have the 4 major associations in automotive involved and establishing this association covering the whole value chain in automotive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. I've seen there is one question in the chat. We will try to reply to it later because now we have to, our agenda is a bit tight. We have to go to the round table. And I have the pleasure to introduce Lauren Redding, who is education advisor for SwissCore. He will be chairing the round table coming up. Previously to joining SwissCore, Lauren worked at the Swiss Foreign Ministry in London and New York, and he also worked for the Swiss National Agency for Exchange and Mobility, Movitia. So thank you, Lauren. I'm giving now the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Noelia, and good morning and a warm welcome from me also to all of you participating this morning. In this second part, entitled the Roundtable, I mean, it's a virtual roundtable, not as fitting as sitting in a car, as you said before. But the idea here really is that we want to zoom in now. So we heard the European perspective from the Commission and also from the Pan-European Skills Alliance to see what's already going on, because as William said in the beginning, there's loads of examples and micro-credentials happening already for a number of times, whether they are called micro-credentials or just have a different name, short courses. It already exists, it's everywhere around us. And in this part, the format is that we'd go around this table and have short presentations from different countries and regions, and then also followed by a discussion with the remaining time. We also asked all speakers to have one question at the end of their presentation to ask to you, to the audience, but also to the other speakers, and to see how we can kickstart this discussion a bit. And I would suggest that the previous speaker's question would then be addressed by the following speaker's question. And of course, you can also answer, because I know in the chat there's lots of people who are also working in this field, that you can also answer in the chat. We'll be very curious to hear from you what your experiences are, and on top of all the questions, of course. So without further ado, I would like to start and then pass the floor, or I should rather say pass the screen on to the first example. And for that, we'll go to Ireland. So we have Dr. Emma Francis here today with us. She's the project officer for the Microcreds project at the Irish University Association. And I pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I'll just share my screen. Screen sharing has been disabled. It'd be great if you could activate that, and I'll share my presentation.
Now we can share your screen.
Perfect, that's great. Easy, okay? Great, we'll get started. Well, good morning, colleagues. Thank you to Lauren at SwissCore and EARLALL for the introduction and indeed for the invitation to the roundtable event today. It's great to have the opportunity to discuss our own work here in Ireland, and especially to learn more about the activities today in Switzerland, Sweden and Spain, and I'm really looking forward to that. The interest in microcredentials and the development of microcredentials it's really grown at pace internationally, right across Europe and particularly here in Ireland. The Microcreds project is funded under the Human Capital Initiative Pillar 3 call, which is derived from the National Training Fund here in Ireland, which targets innovation and agility through teaching and learning. We've got a funding envelope of just over 12.3 million euros running to 2025. The project was due to commence back in 2020, but due to the impact of COVID, we began in 2021. So we have a 5-year project lifecycle condensed into 4 years. The project aims to really deliver on the potential of microcredentials to reimagine lifelong learning, the relationship between universities and learners, and really the ways in which universities and enterprise collaborate. The Irish Universities Association, or the IUA, lead out on this sectoral project in association with 7 of its members. University College Dublin, University College Cork, University of Limerick, Trinity College, NUI Galway, Maynooth University and DCU, many which I'm sure you're aware of through all the activities of the various European University Alliances. The project is led at IUA by our Director of Microcreds, Dr. Lynn Ramsey, supported by myself, in addition to our Digital Engagement and Comms Officer, who has just joined us last week. IUA lead and coordinate this project in conjunction with our dedicated project leads, who are shown here, who are in each of our 7 partner universities, really champion the activities of the project at their institution and across all of the institutions together. Central to the work of the project has been the establishment of our Enterprise Advisory Group. Some of our members are shown here. This group comprises senior representatives from the business representative organisations in Ireland, enterprise agencies, major private sector companies and state bodies with particular responsibilities for skills. The pathway for this project really centres on 4 key strands. Firstly, we want to develop the collective national framework for microcredentials right across the partner universities. And the purpose here is for us to achieve consensus around our understanding of what a microcredential is in an Irish higher education context, underpinned by the work that's ongoing at the Commission. I should note that there are 16 other major HCI funded projects nationally currently, which have microcredentials as key outputs, but we are the project that has been charged with developing the national framework for Ireland. Secondly, we want to build and develop really meaningful engagement with enterprise for the development and rollout of the microcredential programme. So this is really links back into the work of the Enterprise Advisory Group. During phase 1 of our project, we've developed a pilot model, which we have called Microcreds Innovate. And this really seeks to try the engagement focused on 3 specific areas which are undergoing high levels of skills demand. So firstly, zero carbon, then the digital transformation, and then lastly, the SME sector. And we've aligned these to the publication of key national policy reports in Ireland to really elevate the sectoral interest. Our aim is that these pilots will provide a really sustainable vehicle or a sustainable protocol for the co-creation of in-demand and enterprise relevant microcredentials between enterprise themselves and the academics who are right at the knife edge of research and innovation. Thirdly, we're designing and developing a coordinated shop window online portal to drive the awareness of and access to microcredentials, and this will be linked to a digital credentialing solution. And we really anticipate that this digital infrastructure, right from the initial interaction, will provide a positive learner experience. We've undertaken considerable scoping work on this portal, and we're currently engaged in the tender process. This has been quite a significant piece of work for us, which I suppose shouldn't be underestimated. We're trying to align technical integration requirements of 7 different autonomous universities, but I'm pleased to say that we will launch Q1 2023, so quite early next year. And then lastly, we're working with the universities to create a comprehensive suite of course offerings right across diverse disciplines and to market these courses, helping learners to find and track flexible offerings which will meet and respond to their needs. Microcredentials have been coming on stream from the partner universities since last year, with many more on the way, and these will become available on the portal once this is launched early next year as well. We are in our pilot phase 1 currently. We have an agreed definition, we have our agreed core values and our constitutive elements. We've adopted the EU definition following the publication of the proposal for the Council recommendation on the European approach. As William has alluded to, this is undergoing formal scrutiny and we hope for formal adoption in the coming weeks. For us, essentially, a microcredential is a small volume of learning which is quality assured by our universities. It's credit bearing and develops knowledge, skills and competencies that respond to a specific need, and this will typically be a societal or a labour market need. They will be standalone or they can be combined within university or between universities to become a larger credential or award. Our microcredentials were centred on a number of core values reflecting the ambition of the universities to show leadership in lifelong learning. These include being flexible, agile, learner-focused. They have dynamic enterprise collaboration, show excellence and innovation, and tackling the economic and societal challenges and promoting inclusiveness. We've recently achieved consensus amongst our project partners on many of the major recommendations that will comprise a national framework on microcredentials. Each microcredential will have a specific credit size drawn from a sliding scale of 1 to 30 ECTS across levels 6 to 9 on the Irish National Framework of Qualifications, which translates to level 5 to 7 on the European Qualification Framework. These quality assured and university accredited microcredentials can be standalone, or they can be stacked into larger awards through coherent pathways. They'll have transparent learning outcomes and will be awarded following an assessment of achievement. A number of other areas we are exploring within the context of our framework currently is the inclusion of NFQ level 10, which would translate into level 8 on EQF, and determining the role of RPL, or recognition of prior learning. On the stacking the recognition and portability of microcredentials, as we're in the initial pilot phase, we're working currently to identify examples of good practice in these areas in our own universities across Europe and further afield. And this is facilitating the preparation of high-level insights and recommendations on stacking for our partner universities to consider for the national framework. And I suppose we're mindful as well of the need that these areas will require much wider consultation as the work progresses. And of course, remembering that Ireland is one country and it is a small country. The IUA has recently been successful in acquiring funding for an Erasmus Plus project, which we've imaginatively called Micronet. We will lead this project alongside our partners in the EUA, Qualifications Ireland, and along with 2 European university alliances. The European University of Post-Industrial Cities, and that's facilitated through UCC, and the European Consortium of Innovative Universities, and that's with DCU. Really following on from the outcomes of Microball and with the advent of the Council recommendations, we thought it was really timely for the establishment of such a transnational peer learning network to really promote awareness and understanding of microcredentials, sharing good policy and practice approaches to quality assurance for microcredentials using the Bologna tools, and to develop and grow understanding and support for learning mobility and pathways across EHEA. And we're pleased that this will now run alongside the life cycle of the Microcreds project and will commence shortly. I suppose one other thing to mention is that our Minister for Higher Education will shortly be hosting an upcoming peer learning activity on microcredentials in conjunction with the Commission. This will be attended by a number of the ministries and higher education representatives across our member states. And I think there's going to be a lot of crossover in the topics that will be discussed today at the round table. And to conclude, Lauren asked me to pose a question on my own to colleagues at the round table. And that is, how do you think we can unlock national and European skills data to really support the development of microcredentials, particularly those which target the skills challenges William has just referred to in his earlier presentation? The pace of change in the labour market underscores, I suppose, the importance of dynamic skills demand forecasting, which then can be interpreted and understood at a level which facilitates the development of appropriate and relevant microcredentials. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much to you, Emma, for sharing the perspective and especially the project in the higher education sector in Ireland. I think it would be particularly interesting to see maybe in the debate afterwards as well how the higher education sector and the vet sector can connect, or where the microcredentials debate in the two sectors touch, and maybe also find some synergies in that role. And also thank you for the announcements for the Micronet and the peer learning activity. I think that'd be quite interesting for a number of people present here today as well. The question I think about data is very relevant, and that I would now pass it on, of course, to everybody listening to give some answers in the chat if you want to, and of course also to our next speaker. I would like to invite Pascal Pachou. He's the president of the Swiss University Continuing Education Network, Swiss Uni, and also the executive director for further education at EPFL in Lausanne, and also at the University of Lausanne, and a member of the steering committee of USEN, the European Network of Continuing Education in Higher Education. So without further ado, The floor is yours, Pascal.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Great to be here today. Very impressive presentation from Emma with this national framework in Ireland. I have to say that we are not there yet in Switzerland, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of really the view from higher education, the system that has been in place for years, that we don't call as such micro-credentials, but in a way, I think we've been doing micro-credentials without knowing it over the last few years. So as an introduction, I like to use this slide where on the left you have a gray Eiffel Tower that represents the old traditional, I would say, monolithic type of continuing education program. One path, same content for everyone. And we've moved from this situation to situation on the right with a multicolored Eiffel Tower that represents flexibility, modularity, and individualization. Each piece is a component, can be a module. Every learner can combine pieces and build its own tower. And you can start with one piece, then another, combine them. Obviously, this is not something which is easy at the beginning, and there is the risk of going to a situation where you have some ambiguity, where you don't know what does each piece really represent, how you can combine them. And I think that in that sense, the European Common Framework for Microcredentials, or the example in Ireland, are really great examples of putting the house into order, and so that people really understand, have common definitions, and work on stackability. The situation in Switzerland, I called it on this slide the Swiss toolbox, if you want, was at the same time as the Bologna reform, we defined very clearly what is what in terms of continuing education programs, which, as you can see, go from short programs where you give or you don't give ECTS credits for, and then you have a number of a different type of certificate. You have a certificate of open studies, you have a certificate of advanced studies, then a diploma of advanced studies or master of advanced studies. The main difference between those programs are the number of ECTS credits you need to accumulate, and also the entry requirement can be different. And then basically what we've seen in the evolution is that most of the program being developed in continuing educations are programs where they are really fully modular. If you want, you have short programs. Short programs can combine into a certificate, and then you can also accumulate certificates and then end up with a full master of advanced studies. Another way to show it, it's in terms of really the individual learning pathways. More and more, now you see someone is going to start with a short program, do another one, do a third one. It leads to a certificate of advanced studies, and then people will do the same thing and accumulate those certificates and end up with a full master. So this is what I call the Swiss Swiss toolbox, in the sense it gives us really the element we need. Also, I think in the context of the micro-credentials, in a way, we already have the toolbox. So we still have now a lot of work, I think, to move to a national framework or I would even say sometimes international frameworks. I've listed a few questions. I have not only one, I have a few, then maybe we can choose one. But I think some of the questions and challenges are how to label micro-credentials. Do we need to change the way we call them for some of the type of programs we have? Or to ensure smooth stackability. I think stackability is a key word in the whole process. How to best integrate programs from other organizations, also non-universities, also programs from other countries. This is where I think we really have to think at the European level. I think there is another challenge at the level of quality, really defining clear quality requirement and adapting to it. And then, at least in the Swiss context, how to facilitate access to new groups. We have a situation in Switzerland where for a lot of continuing education program, entry requirements are fairly high. Sometimes we require people to already have university education or something that is seen as equivalent. And there, I think we have to make sure we open these to new groups. I would say that maybe if I had to choose one question, it would be maybe the one in the middle, how to integrate really in the learning pathways programs from very different organizations and countries. That was a short view from Switzerland.
Many thanks to you, Pascal, for sharing these thoughts and building the new Eiffel Tower, which is much more colorful and quite nice as well, if I may say so. And your question about how to integrate it all and thinking really on the lifelong learning from whether you start in VET or higher VET, and you might take a course in the private sector, you might take a course in university. I think that is actually quite an interesting challenge, I think, and I'm also very curious to see how that debate will evolve in the future. And maybe my next speaker, Bjorn Flintberg, has some answers to that. So I would pass the floor on to you, Bjorn. Bjorn is the project leader and digital strategist at the Research Institute of Sweden, RISE, and he's leading the Microcredentials pilot there. So over to you, Bjorn.
Yes, thank you very much for that. My name is Bjorn Flintberg, and I am project manager and digital strategist at RISE, the Research Institute of Sweden. We have not come as far either as our Irish friends, but this pilot is sort of one step behind, but we are starting up some interesting collaboration that I would like to tell you about today. Just very briefly, first, I will tell you a little bit about the Research Institute of Sweden, just to frame it. If you know of the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, which I'm sure many of you do, we are similar to that. We are owned by the Ministry of Innovation and Enterprise, so a government-owned applied research institute, which was merged in 2016 when 6 institutes merged to become a very large national research institute with about 3,000 employees. Now, the Swedish sector for vocational and education and training and for adult learning overall, even on the university level, is fragmented as it is in most countries. We've heard a little bit about how that can be addressed, but in Sweden, where we have a very decentralized type of government at large, with municipalities and regions with large independence, and with most of the learning happening on that level, it becomes crucial when looking at different systems to bridge gaps between different types of education, between different levels of education, between formal education and the industry's need for education. And there are some challenges that we have looked at. This pilot is run by the 3 blue-marked government agencies in collaboration with us. It's the Public Employment Agency, the Swedish Council for Higher Education, which is also handling the implementation of Swedish Europass, and the National Agency for Higher Vocational Education, Myndigheten för yrkeshögskolan, which is the vocational agency and in charge of the Swedish implementation of the EQF, the SEQF. Our levels correspond directly to the EQF, so we have the same levels there. It's actually being funded by Vinnova, which is a government agency under the Ministry of Innovation and Enterprise. And it's about 2 million over 3 years, so it's a smaller project. And we at RISE have the benefit of leading it and working with it. And one of the reasons for that is that we are a guide between, we work for the industries and enterprises in Sweden to improve their competitiveness and their readiness for the global arena, help them with the digital transformation. But we also have a request from our owners in the ministry that we also aid the public sector in their transformation and their ability to aid. And with being a research institute, we have very, very close ties to many of the large universities, especially the technical universities. So the pilot itself consists of a few different things. We have a technical pilot, which is underpinned by a model that we're developing. It was started last fall, and we're now coming up on finishing off the model. It will be pretty much the same time as the European Commission finishes their work, and it's built on those recommendations as well, along with the work that's already being done in the field of qualifications and validations. The work package is headed by the Agency for Higher Vocational Education, MEH, and we're trying to build a model where there is also a method that we'll get into in a few minutes that takes into account that different types of micro-credentials can come from different things. And when we look at it in many of the pilots that I have seen and studied, as I've studied the research from not just Europe, but also what they've done in Australia and New Zealand, for instance, usually look at the formal education and then go downwards from there, so to speak, from the more formal and structured micro-credentials learning opportunities into stuff that happens at the workplace with the employers, the examples we saw from Slovakia. But of course, there's a large portion of learning that happens even beyond that. For the pilot project, we have 4 industrial implementations. One is the Northfield Pilot, which will look at different types of education. We actually have some very interesting cases there, which I believe are very modern, I could say, where you actually design a course together with the vocational sector and the university and the municipality, so that it covers actually all of these 3 levels listed here: the adult secondary for some courses, higher vocational education, and some specific university. And these are made for process operators in the battery factory at Northfield in the north of Sweden. So it's a very tailored type of training course that constitutes elements from different types of learning institutions. So it's quite an interesting pilot to apply micro-credentials for. Sabona is a cleaning industry, looking at modular workplace learning. So here we have learning at the workplace, on the job training, and how that could be represented with micro-credentials. The Commercial Employees Union is responsible for the training and education of people in retail. So all the boutiques and all the small stores. And they're looking at independent learning modules that can then be used for micro-credentials, because there is such a wide variety there of different types of learning modules developed by different actors, and to get some structure into that. And then we have the industrial or more production-oriented. Proteco is the textile industry collaborative efforts, and they also have a look at the basic and add-on modules. Industry in Sweden has come fairly long way when it comes to actually establishing their own validation system for qualifications that is recognized by the industry, which is parallel to and partly integrated through the EQF or SEQF with a formal system. But there is a gap for sure that we're all trying to bridge here. All of this is then tied into an overarching reference group representing everything from government agencies to parties from the work market to industry stakeholders and so on, and integrated with the rest of the work, because in Sweden at the moment there is a very large process of digital infrastructure work when it comes to lifelong learning. The universities have been tasked with handling the lifelong learning process. There are the other agencies responsible for other different parts of this, including the public employment agencies who will deal with the data infrastructure that comes from this. We saw the data model is a key thing from also mentioned by the Commission. So it's important for us that this ties into both the Europass, the EQF, and all the other work that's going on already. But Apologies. In addition to that, I think one thing that should be kept in mind is that even though we are now building this current pilot, as you can see in this staircase model, from the types of micro-credentials, the types of learning that have a trust level of the quality assurance from the very legally controlled and governed, whether it's regulated properly, down to private educators that may or may not be part of the formal system. Today, you can take courses online from Microsoft, for instance, and they may or may not be connected to universities. There are examples of both. But when you move further down the staircase, there's learning all the way down from the bottom of self-assessed knowledge, which is common in some industries. If you take the IT industry, for instance, you have a lot of people who are self-trained. And that would make the claim that I am good at programming Python or JavaScript. That is the type of knowledge that cannot today be measured or documented properly. And this is quite understandable, and it's natural that the pilots start from the other end of the staircase, so to speak. But I think it's important that we don't forget in this general effort to improve the documentation of learning, that we also remember that there are still other types of learning that are not able to sort of reach the level of assurance and quality that they can be transformed into micro-credentials. But it is interesting to see if there are other things that can be done so that they gradually could be moved up the ladder to a better form of validation through badges or just simply by documentation. And that could also help people that are further from the work market and so on. So we are looking at trying to find a second pilot to start up parallel to this, and we have made some headway with the regional governments in different parts of Sweden to look at this end of the thing, but it is not part of the scope here. The scope is the 4 pilot models that I described earlier. And so the end goal of this project will end in the December of 2023, is that we will have both a model that has been tested with these 4 different groups, but also a technical solution that actually can show much like the Slovakian ones, and that can be compatible with the rest of the national digital infrastructure and with the work of the Europass that is ongoing and ramping up also in Sweden. So it's an early stage project in that sense, but we see that it can bridge the gap between many actors, and we also see it as a stepping stone to be able to look into the areas of learning that happens more informally and the non-formal ones that are not yet validated to a degree where they can be fully trusted. So I think there's a lot of work here to be done in the years to come for all of us, for sure. But it's very motivating to see all these different examples. The question I would like to send off with at the end of this is whether micro-credentials, in addition to sort of strengthening the individual's ability and mapping their career into the employer's way of doing better recruitment, which is one thing we've already heard in the preliminary work, and the planning of national education programs and so on. Is there a possibility that the micro-credentials can also be a bridge sort of between formal education and industry training in some sense with regards to skills, competences, qualifications? I believe they may, but there are so many different perspectives on this. So it would be interesting to hear for the roundtable purpose if there are other perspectives on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bjorn, for sharing the Swedish example and for posing a very pertinent question. So yeah, feel free to share your experiences and answers to that question in the chat as well. And we'll conclude our very short tour of European micro-credentials examples in Catalonia in Spain, where we have two speakers. We'll have a representative from the ministry, from the Regional Ministry of Education of the government of Catalonia, Cristina Marfil. She's the technical advisor, and we also have a concrete vet center represented by Neus Kaufapé. She's the principal of the Institut de Escola de Treball in Lleida. Sorry, and I think we'll start with Cristina, if I remember this correctly. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. Well, I'm going to present like a short short presentation of what's going on at the moment in Spain. Well, one moment. I'm trying to, sorry.
Is something happening? Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well,
You can see it, yes.
Yeah. Recently, a new law has been published from the Spanish government that just to try to implement microcredentials. Well, first of all, before talking about microcredentials, I want to tell you a bit about the VAT system in Spain. In Spain, we have 3 levels. First of all, we will see the basic vocational training, which is for those students that haven't finished the compulsory secondary education. Then we have the VAT, like the normal VAT will be intermediate and higher. And then now that is new is like VAT specialization courses, which is after one student or one person has finished an intermediate or a higher, can always carry on doing a specialization course just to get more experience on in a narrow field. Okay. First of all, in this new law that I say it was published in November 2021, it defines the microcredential as accreditable, so they have to be certified by a learning outcome, and all the students, all these microcredentials have to be recognized both by employers and by academic institutions, so both worlds, the labor market and the academia. They have to be stackable. I think that's one of the main points in this Spanish law. A learner has to be able to store and accumulate like these micro credentials to combine them to form a higher certification. And lastly, they have to be recognized. They have to be recognized both in national, in Spanish institutions, and as well as in Europe institutions. So the training is offered in a vertical, so for very, very short micro learning experience to a full VAT course. And this is an example of this new law. As I said, the microcredentials have to be flexible, they have to be stackable, and they have to be integrated in the national catalog of vocational training offers. So we start from A. A is the minimum microcredential. So to be a microcredential, it has to be able to certify a partial recognition of a professional competence. And in the academia world, that will be equitative to a learning outcome. Then we go up, so a bit bigger microcredentials. Then in academia will be professional subject, and that will lead to a recognition of a professional competence. Then if the learner wants to study 2 or more professional subjects, that will lead to a professional certificate. And at the end of this path, we will have a full course on a vocational education training, either on intermediate or higher. So the student can just begin from the bottom and go upwards. And for the and now I will give the floor to Neus Cafapé, who is the director of Escola de Treball de Lleida. Neus?
Okay, I'm going to present. Okay, that's great. I will. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah? Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to present. I'm going to put full screen. Let's see if it works. Yeah. Oh, it was in the end. Sorry. Okay. Can you see it? Yes.
Yes, all good.
Okay, wonderful. I am the principal of a Vit training center in Lleida, which is a city, big city near Barcelona. As a Vit center, we are always working to improve the possibilities of employment of our graduates. Therefore, when the new law was approved, the new Spanish law was approved that took into consideration the micro-credentials, we perceived it as an opportunity to upskill our graduates. Therefore, we decided to ask for a case. Well, we decided to apply in this year's call of Erasmus Plus with a project called Micro-Vet, an opportunity to upskill vet graduates. Okay. Why did we decide this? As I said before, because of the launch of the new Spanish law that took into account micro-credentials. Also, because we had seen the launch of the recommendation proposal on micro-credential that was launched last December. Also, because of the variety of non-standardized micro trainings all over Europe and without a standardized framework. Also because of the lack of formal recognition of some small trainings, because they are not either aligned to the national qualification framework or the European qualification framework, and basically also because of the increase of training demands due to the emerging sectorial needs, as we've seen with our speakers before. Who forms the partnership? We decided that 4 training centers would be in the partnership. They are from Spain, Lithuania, Portugal, and France. We have been working together in other projects, and we have similar needs and similar objectives according to the employability and upskilling of our students and graduates. Also a university, in this case it's a university in the south of Italy, a foundation, which is a foundation that aims to support research development in the education sector, which belongs to Ankara in Turkey, and also a regional directorate. We thought that this mixture of partners would give a broader perspective to us and would be an added value. Also, we chose these partners because, as you can see, there are many partners from the south of Europe, because Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal, we get the highest unemployment rates in youth unemployment rates, and that's always an issue for us and something we want to work with. What we propose 2 things. Basically, one, to analyze the labor requirements for 2030 in the territorial areas of the partnership, and also to analyze the feature of micro trainings in the context of our countries, the existing micro trainings. Okay. At this stage, we aim to compare the flexibility of the Vit curricula in Europe and its possibilities of recognition and capitalization. I think that capitalization, I understand it as the stackability. Okay, you can see here an example of EQF4 qualification here in Catalonia. For example, technician in administrative management that takes 2,000 hours. For example, we have on the left the competence unit. And then in the EQF4 qualification, we have one module, for example, which is human resources administrative operations. But then in Catalonia, we have subdivided the modules, and we have made micro pills, which are selection and training, hiring and remuneration, and work activity process. And that would be training units. And that could be a clear example of what a micro-credential could be in Catalonia, at least in Catalonia, because in the rest of Spain, where at least the national law, the former one, only spoke about modules, but not training units. But now with the new law, we are glad because we can just make chunks which will allow our students and our graduates to go on upskilling and then capitalizing. Well, I say the word capitalizing, but I'm not sure it's a correct one, but it's stacking. Okay. We aim also to compare the Vit curricula in the other partners territories. Okay. The first result will be a handbook on the structure and use of micro-credential. As I have perceived today, there is a lot of work done. When we wrote the project, we didn't think that there was so much work done and so many experiences so far. So we wanted to just launch or develop a document outlining the agreed key characteristics and features of successful micro trainings, including features and modes and accreditation possibilities, and also a document specifying how to proceed when designing them. At this stage, we also aim to analyze other accreditation possibilities. I've seen today the automotive sector ones, that's wonderful, amazing. But so far we knew about open badges, we knew that the Europass digital credential is being developed. So we want to explore a little bit on this. But now, after the webinar today, we have even more places to look at, okay? Result 2 would be a design of 3 micro-credential programs focused on the findings in the research on labor requirements, and also on the proposed features of result 1, okay? So we want to take result 1, and then when we design these 3 micro-credential programs, we will take into account what we have developed in our first result, and also the labor requirements that we have analyzed in the different territorial areas. Also at this stage, we might consider the sustainable development goals. For example, goal number 8, that is promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. So we think that the pandemic has been a big problem for our graduates because the rate of unemployment is still very, very high. And we think that we might also mention and have a look at the development goals, okay? And finally, our final result will be a development of a digital repository. I've seen that we are not the only ones who've thought of this. It will be called eGraduate, so that it will be a place to access to micro-credential programs, and also to provide opportunities for collaboration, sharing best practices, and developing new micro-credential programs. At this stage, we also offer our platform. We have some of the partners in this project. We also created the EARLALL community. The EARLALL community was created because we worked together, some of us, in a former project called European Research on Vet. And we have a website full of resources and services for vet learners and vet teachers, and also for vet graduates. And I think, well, we think it could be a good place to also put the e-graduate repository, okay? And that is more or less all. My question is, don't you think there might be an answer? There might be a danger that institutions all over Europe establish their own accreditation badges before there is a common European standard set. This is my worry. Okay, so that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Neus and Cristina, for sharing the example from Catalonia. And this concludes our little round table, or I should say round trip around the European microcredentials examples. And I'm sure there are many more. There was a lot of information already this morning, and you can see it's a lot going on in this field, whether it's in VET, in higher education and continuing education, and also outside of formal education systems. So this was supposed to be a sneak peek, so we see a bit what's going on, and now we can continue to learn from each other. And if you want to reach out to some projects or people you've seen this morning, then don't hesitate to get in touch with us, or you find their information on the internet anyway. So in this case, we're at the end of the time, so I would pass the floor to Maria for the conclusion, and thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, it's just I mean, it's just such a shame that we don't have more time to discuss on the different examples and the different good practices that we've seen today. It's been really a pleasure to see how we can all work together. Well, as a concluding remark, I would just say that We've seen examples on how to do it in different sectors, from the European Commission, also associations, such sectoral associations such as ASA. We have all, I think, seen that we have to work on core competencies for different needs and educational levels. So micro-credentials look for those core skills and competencies to be learned by workers and also students, as you said, Lauren, in the different levels of education. But we wanted this webinar to be also a showcase of what's going on and how we can move forward on that initiative launched by the European Commission. As I said at the beginning, we should all work together. For example, regional authorities for officially recognize the micro-credentials that anyone can acquire abroad. If maybe to try to find a common standard, maybe some let's say core characteristics that all micro-credentials should have in order to be recognized. I'm not talking about content, I'm talking about form more, maybe hours devoted to learning a skill or a competence more than the competence itself, because they might vary from country to country. Also, regional authorities should carry out skills forecasting together with the stakeholders involved, companies, chambers of commerce, etc., because they are the ones who might know what the workers might need to know and should know when they start working. And also researchers should create and propose them. We saw that great example from Ireland and the others. I mean, educators, you know what it's, I mean, competent institutions can provide you with what the labor market needs, and you know how to teach them to your students and the people you have in your classrooms, and how you can involve those in your syllabus and programs of study. Well, in a nutshell, I think it's been a very good session of exchange of good practices at levels. We do hope you've learned a lot and you have many questions to be asked that you can forward us. I think that my colleague Noelia now can provide you with an exam with the email. Maybe we can write it down in the chat. Please feel free to send us questions on any of the sessions. And just as a leader of the Skills and Labor Market Working Group in EARLALL, I just want to thank you for being here today. And I want to mention as well that in autumn, we would like to have another similar webinar on individual learning accounts, which is another initiative launched by the European Union that might be of interest to all of you. So thank you again for having been here today, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks. Noelia?
On my behalf, just to thank again the audience for staying with us until the end. Thanks a lot to the speakers, really interesting session. I agree with what you were saying, Maria and Lauren as well. We will gather on the presentation, as we said at the beginning, as well as the recording, and we will share with all of you. There were also very interesting comments on the chat, a CEDEFOP report that has been published, an invitation to a conference organized by the DAAD in the German organization. So, I mean, there is a lot of things to continue the discussion, and yeah, we will be in touch. Thanks a lot to SwissCore for co-organizing this with us, and bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.